shorter reading, I'm going to read a couple of the very, very short pieces from my collection, and these are the pieces that I was writing when I had a second child and he was a newborn and I was desperate and I didn't think I would ever write again, and so I would make myself write a draft of something during his naps, and very strange creatures were born. So I'll start with produce. I started grocery shopping at one of the new big places that takes up an entire city block, but claims to support the environment and our health and world peace and all of that. It's one of those multi-billion-dollar chains that claims to be making a difference in the world, but you still feel just as lost in the glare of the floors as you would in any other grocery store. I can barely afford to walk away with half a bag of groceries each week, but it's a habit I can't break. I go there for the produce. They've got a woman there who cries over all of the produce, row upon row upon row of all the organic stuff that they ship in from across the world and perhaps the galaxy. African butternut magpie berry fruits, Japanese dancing mud pie banana nuts. Okay, so maybe I'm making those particular names up, but the names are outrageous all the same. And this woman that's been hired to cry over all of this crazy expensive produce wears one of the stiff-collared shirts with the tight company logo stitched right above the heart. She seems pretty efficient, scurrying from row to row. She cups her hands beneath her eyes when she's walking from one display to the next so she doesn't waste any of her tears. She lets them fall gently between her fingers and rain down onto the butter lettuce and the red kale. I've never seen a single tear end up on the gleaming floor. I guess someone could slip and fall and sue the place if that happened, and I bet it hasn't, because why would she still be working here? She cries, and each of us has our own little modern-looking cart with smooth, silent wheels. We move around each other silently, but she's always making noise, the woman who cries on the produce. Usually it's just soft little sounds, lots of sighs. You get the sense that there's some kind of melancholy and longing in her heart just below the store's logo for something distant. Maybe something that she's forgotten about in a way. But then there are days when I shop there and she is standing over the flawless tomatillas or the crisp sea beans, just wailing and letting out gut-wrenching sobs and little shrieks and screams. On those days, she's crying about something specific and raw and very real. We all push our silent carts and pretend not to notice. We brush by her shuddering shoulders in order to get to the choicest kumquat, the most perfect starfruit. Those are the best days. I swear you can see the stuff growing more beautiful right before your eyes. Firmer or softer, plumper or tighter. I have to fight the urge to fill my cart to the brim on those days. I make my choices and then I head toward the checkout area as slowly as possible. I hate to rush it. Sometimes I browse new, expensive products that I'll never buy or understand. I take my time scoping out the free samples. And then I look for the longest checkout line. But oh, the feeling. The cloth handles of my designer shopping bag, no plastic in that place, of course, press into the crook of my arm during the long walk home, leaving behind a woven indentation that I wish would never fade away. When I get back to my apartment, I take my time. I really do try to. I put the things away. I wipe down the counter even though it is already clean. I sharpen the sharp knife. If I could, I would press pause on the entire world before slicing into it. But I can't. I slice into it then, when there is nothing else to do. The magnificent glistening there, the deep, sweet smell before you even see it or touch it or taste it, the very center of her grief. So I read a few of these short stories to some of Paul's students at Northwest Academy, and they got it somehow. I don't get it. They were getting it for me. I was really excited. All right, I'll read one more called Monster Drinks Chocolate Milk. The monster who has been haunting me since I was a kid is depressed. We sit on my kitchen counter in the middle of the night and drink chocolate milk. This is so awkward, he says. Don't worry about it, I say. But really, he says, I feel kind of bad about this. I shake my head, hoping he can see that there's nothing to feel bad about. I mean, the whole scaring me shitless in the middle of the night a few times a month since I was a toddler. Yeah, go ahead and feel bad about that, I think to myself, but not this whole depression thing. I know it's hard to think through this clearly, I want to tell him, but this isn't your fault. The two of us stay quiet for a long time, sipping our chocolate milk and watching our legs dangle below us. I guess I should tell you what my monster looks like. I've never really had a chance to look at him and study him before. But now, sitting next to me here on my kitchen counter under the hard fluorescent light, I see that he isn't that big. In fact, if he were a man, he'd be considered pretty short. He would probably have a complex about it. His skin is rough and cracked, which I guess I would have expected for a monster. His eyes are tiny and roomy and gross. He's got dark bags under his little eyes. And I wonder if this has something to do with his depression, or if it's just a monster thing. I've got this anxiety, he says. His glass is empty, and so I hop down to make him more chocolate milk. I don't even ask him if he wants more. I'm anxious all the time, he says. I stir and stir as fast as I can, trying to break up the glob of Hershey syrup that's stuck to the bottom of the glass. Anxiety is like a beast, he says, and I nod so he can see that I get the metaphor. My monster says he's hungry. I open the fridge and try to think of something I could whip together and somehow impress a guest with. He sidles up to me, or lurches actually, monsters really do lurch, and starts helping himself. He pulls out an old expired bag of shredded cheese I've been ignoring for months. He starts stacking various sized Tupperware containers in his arms, and I have no idea what's in those things. He sets everything on the counter between us, and then he eats all of it. He doesn't even look at the stuff. He just eats it. I'm so embarrassed. Some of the stuff I don't even recognize anymore. Some of the stuff I have to fight not to gag when I see it or smell it. I'm embarrassed, but then I realize that monsters probably love this kind of stuff, that he's probably relieved that I'm such a lazy slob. When he's finally full and happy, well, he's depressed, but you know what I mean. I feel some of the awkwardness that was between us before melt away a little bit. I feel like I could say anything to him right now, and so I tell him that I'm embarrassed. Not about the old, gross food in my refrigerator, though. What I say is, I'm too embarrassed to tell people that you still come to me at night. I say, I'm too embarrassed to tell people how afraid of you I still am. My monster nods his head softly. He doesn't need to say anything, and he knows it. I wish that I could keep this moment forever. I wish it were a tangible thing. Could you do it, I ask him. Could you scare me? Here, he asks. I nod. And so he gives me the look. He just turns his head and does it. Everything happens like usual, in the exact same sequence. It doesn't matter that it is not dark and that I am not curled into myself on top of my bed. He looks at me, and the horrible fear falls over my head and breaks open like an egg with a shell that has already been cracked, just a tiny hairline fracture, and ready. There's the paralysis, of course. There is the exploding heart and the collapsed lungs and the dryness sucking at my eyes like a horrible, evil Hoover. I feel it all. I feel the things that I could never tell you, and I almost fall right off of the counter. But then he stops. He looks back down at his dangling short legs. He is so sad. I can see that now. He is more sad than he is monster. And now I wonder if he'll ever do it again, look at me like that. And I feel crazy because I wonder if I would miss it. Nice curtains, he says, staring at the cheap fabric hanging above the sink, which will look so chintzy in the light of day. Before he leaves, my monster insists on doing the dishes. I try to talk him out of it. I lie and say that I enjoy doing dishes, that it relaxes me. I point out the dishwasher, but he just shrugs and fills up the left side of the sink with hot water and suds. He washes everything by hand and is surprisingly thorough. He takes his time. He won't even let me dry. He's got a few angry tufts of hair scattered across his skull, and I stare at them while he does the dishes. I think about how if those tufts of hair were thick and luscious, and if he were a woman, a human woman, right here in this room with me at this very minute, drinking chocolate milk and bravely scavenging through my old, inappropriate leftovers in the middle of the night, I would be glad, and she would be beautiful. Thank you.